let's start with you, Katie. Was your family really religious growing up as a child?
Oh yes, we always attended mass and services, and yeah, midnight mass. We wouldn't miss that midnight mass at Christmas, and oh yeah.
Did you guys read the Bible at home at all? Or pray at home at all?
Well, we prayed at home, but didn't really read the Bible.
Okay. When you first started going to services, were they in German?
Yes, they were.
How did the community react when they started going to English?
Well, they kind of were opposed, especially the older people at the time. You know, they weren't too happy about it, but gradually just had to go along with it, you know, and until they just finally went strictly to the English. You know, they just had to accept it.
Were the German homilies, were they in High German, or were they in the German that you spoke?
Well, I guess that kind of depended on the priest. We had a priest from Germany for, over 25 years, you know, and so everybody was used to it, you know, to that higher German, and then the other ones didn't really speak of that high German that didn't come from Germany, you know, that grew up here, and so it was easy to understand, because you were German, you know, all your life. There was just no problem.
It wasn't that big of a difference between the High German and then the Common German?
Well, there is a difference, but everybody just understood it.
Okay. Yeah. And Felix, what about your family? Were they religious when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, there was, I mean, you wouldn't miss Mass, you know, I mean, you were always in Mass. And my mother did, we prayed the rosary, you know, evenings, and all of that, you know, yeah. Of course, had to go to, during the summer, we went to, what we call summer school. We had nuns here in Strasbourg, you know, and so the nuns would give us 2 weeks of religion during the summer.
Was that at the church, or was that
It was church basement, a lot of it, or we had the Catholic school, so we'd use the Catholic school. See, we had so a lot of it was there, mostly in the Catholic school, you know. And we'd go for 2 weeks, we'd get instructions, you know. And then, of course, to go to First Holy Communion was special days again. We had to be there and things like that, you know, but that's the only religion we'd get, was the rest we'd get from home, you know. But and then for a number of years, you know, before Mass, maybe 15 minutes, the nuns were down the basement, and us kids would go down the basement and have, you know, instructions, 15 minutes or so, you know, before church, before services. But the big thing was the 2 weeks before summer school.
And yours was in English?
Yeah, everything was in English when I went to summer school. Yeah.
Was yours in English as
well?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
And then, you know, the Mass was in Latin, so it really didn't matter too much. You didn't understand it anyway, you know. So it was all in Latin, and the sermons were in German, see, but the Mass was Latin. And so it didn't make really a lot of difference when the church turned to the English, because at least people understood then, you know, because nobody knew Latin, so it was kind of not a hard thing to turn over to, you know.
They preferred the English over the Latin?
Yeah, at least people could, I did, you know, you could understand everything. Maybe some of the older ones. As a matter of fact, there's some today that there's a priest up in Bismarck that has a Latin Mass every 2 weeks or whatever, and there's some that won't go to the other one and go to the Latin one. so, you know, people didn't want to turn from that, but that's the way it went, yeah.
I think some of the way older people still use their old German prayer book.
Yeah, some do.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose.
The way older ones.
So,
I know Helen Crum, she has her own.
Old German thing, yeah.
Prayer book.
Yeah.
Did you guys make First Communion in German or English?
I did it in English. I don't know how you went.
Oh, yeah, I'm not too sure anymore.
Yeah. Ours
I
was
know I
English.
knew all the prayers in German real well,
Well,
and
I of course learned the German prayers at home. See, my mother would say the rosary in German, yeah. So we learned that. I learned that at home. But when we went to school, and all the instructions was in English. Yeah, the nuns would teach English.
Tell me, what was Christmas like in your homes? Katie, why don't you tell me?
it was different from today. Today, I really believe there's too much focus put on gifts and gifts and gifts, and party and big meals, and the church services and midnight mass, which was something you just didn't want to miss when we were young, and that's losing out. That's losing its meaning. Originally that was always held at 12 o'clock at night, the midnight mass, and it could be a pretty bad storm or cold, and there was rarely that any family missed. They could possibly go to that midnight mass, and today it's losing its meaning. It's the pleasure and the gifts and the family get-togethers is kind of taking over.
Did you ever get gifts at Christmas time?
Well, you'd get, just small little bit, something small, just so you'd get something, and you'd get a bag with probably orange and a few nuts in, and maybe a few little candy, but that's nothing compared to what is today, That's why I'm saying it's the true meaning of it is just being lost.
Would your family sing Christmas carols when you got home from Mass?
Um,
or on Christmas Day? Or?
Probably the bigger families.
Yeah, we never did. No, we never did. Midnight mass, and then you'd come home. Of course, like midnight mass. There was an old thing that we always did. My folks made. There was what they call galadets. It's a German name. They probably came from Russia, but it's made out of pig's feet, and yeah. And anyway, that was all cut up, cleaned up, and it was boiled, and it made kind of a gelatin on it, and that was the lunch you had after Christmas Mass. Yeah.
Did you like this pig?
It's good. Some still make it today. As a matter of fact, my brother does. He makes it every once in a while. He brings some in for us. Yeah. It's different, but it's the only time really it was when it was made was for after midnight mass. They had lunch on that. Yeah.
Did either of your parents make anything else special for Christmas?
Yeah, really, I don't know. Nothing really. I mean, of course, they'd have cake and whatever, something, but other than that, like I never remember getting much in toys. Like she said, you got a little bag of candy and peanuts, an orange in there where you only got once a year, they weren't available like they are today. And of course, we did have, don't remember, even with a sled, to come to the farm, Santa Claus. Then first came Bilsenegel. That's a word you never heard before either.
No.
Okay, that was something to scare the kids if they didn't behave, and he'd be dressed all in a big overcoat or something. You wouldn't see his face. Face was covered, and he'd carry a chain, and then of course he'd ask, in German, which were the bad ones, and the folks, well, he wasn't so good, whatever. Of course, then he'd come and grab you, and you'd cry and try to get away, and that was always the worst thing. You didn't want to see the bills, and of course, after that was over, and then Santa came and brought you the gifts, and that was fine,
And you dressed up as these people?
Yeah, they had somebody, they'd drive around from farm to farm with sled and horses, and they'd have just ordinary guys, a couple of guys went together, and one was the Santa, and the other one was the Bilsenegel, and so that's how it happened, yeah.
Well, they sometimes had the Christine with too.
Well, yeah, sometimes
Christine,
that too.
A lady would be all dressed in white and kind of a veil over her face, and then she was
Kind of like an
the
angel.
good person, and she would give the gifts and whatever to the children then.
Instead of Santa giving the gifts?
Well,
actually,
it's a little different. Santa was dressed like he is today.
like he is today,
And,
but
the angel, she was, dressed kind of like an angel. I don't remember having wings on, but they were dressed in white, and there, of course, that was the good part of it, First came the bills and needed to scare you. But, I don't remember he taking anybody. It's just the thing that scared a little something into you to be nicer to the next. Well, probably was forgotten 2 days afterwards anyway. But anyway, yeah, those are some of the things that happened, yeah. It was common, very common.
What was Easter like for your families?
well,
I don't know.
I guess being an only child, some of those things weren't carried out too much.
Well, of course, there was always we always had the colored eggs, and stuff like that. I mean, that was a must, you'd see the colored eggs. But other than that, it was, no different. You went to church and it wasn't much different.
I think some families would hide some of the eggs for the egg hunt for the kids and stuff.
But that was nothing really out of the ordinary.
Would you guys go to church more? Would you go on Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and
Oh
Holy
yeah,
Saturday as well as Easter?
yeah. You'd never miss any of those days. And like she was talking about the rogation days during when were they? They were just before
the last week in May, usually.
And they had an altar that they would carry on the street to a few stages, and then the people would all come out of church and follow that little altar, and every so often they would stop and the priest would talk a little bit something or give you a blessing or whatever, and so you'd go to about 3 or 4 different stops, and those were what they called the rogation days, yeah. And everybody, we had over in Hague area, we had some of the Hollanders were common around the area, and they'd always say, just wait till those rhodesian days, and then after that we're going to get some rain. They kind of believed in that, and maybe it happened, I don't know, but there was something about it, because it was always done just right around springtime and before spring's work, and then or in middle of spring's work, and then they always depended on that, or it was really done for that reason, to bless the fields. That's why they went out into the streets, to really bless the fields and stuff, and that's what rogation days are all about, yeah.
Did you guys celebrate Names Day?
Lots of names days.
What were each of yours Names Day? Do you remember what day it was?
Mine is November 20th, and when is Kettering?
25th, November 25th.
So, yeah.
What would your families do to celebrate your Names Day?
Well, of course, we, my folks, that's a tradition that goes way back, My folks, my dad's name's day was January the 17th, and it was always cold and snow, but people would come and celebrate, Well, they had dances, and there was a musician there, played accordion, they'd dance, and of course there was the red eye and the beer and all kinds of fun, Those first days when we were married, we did it all the time too yet. We had our basement was kind of open yet, and we've had all kinds of accordion players there, and we celebrated our names days. That was something that was done, very common.
And what about your family? Would they do the same type of thing for Names Day? Have a celebration?
Not so much that I can recall that we'd have a lot of people in, I don't think it was held that much.
Where you'd hate?
Well, my mom's name was Barbara, so they would have some company, but it wasn't that they would have a musician in or anything like that. Just some company.
Would there be a big Names Day celebration for the church's Names Day?
Church feast. Sure, that's what you're referring
The
to,
church
right?
feast,
Church
yeah.
feast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
That was always held, yeah. Like St. Peter and Paul was a big day, you know, even though it was not a holiday, but we went to church here, but we had always lots of company on St. Peter and Paul's Day, you know. All the relatives would show up and it'd be a big day, yeah. And then, of course, St. Mary's, you know, at Hague is a holiday, so it'd be the same, you know. Even when we started farming over there, and lots of her uncles and aunts would come in and visit us on the church feast day, yeah.
Would you work on your name's day or the church feast
Well,
day?
name's day didn't mean anything. That was just held in the evening, you know. But on the church feast day, no, there was no work done. It was just, well, it is a holy day of obligation. I mean, St. Mary's, but St. Peter and Paul's wasn't a holy day of obligation, but people just celebrated it, you know.
But actually, we still do celebrate it over at Hague at St. Mary's
Yeah.
on August 15th.
Well,
Yeah,
it's a
we always-
holy day of obligation, yeah.
We always have a mass and we serve a lunch. And this year, I understand Father is planning to say a rosary and have some of the service outside by the grotto that's next to the church there.
That's St. Mary's in Hague.
At St. Mary's in Hague, yeah. So
Okay.
that's just always been a very special day for our parish over there.
I just always had some feast. I
Right.
suppose it's around harvest time, or had harvest not begun yet?
No, it's
Well,
usually
it's-
still in harvest. It's usually
yeah.
people aren't done yet. Because it's
But,
middle of August, depending on how early your crops are.
Those early days, regardless, nobody worked, you know.
Yeah.
Nobody worked on Sunday, you know, it's different than it is today.
What
well-
would families do on a Sunday then?
Well,
I don't know, I think they used to go to company a little more than today.
yeah, I don't know, you just,
Kind of a
you
day
probably
rest.
worked around the farm if there was something that needed probably repair or something, but you didn't go to the field, you know. Yeah, you didn't go to the field on a Sunday.
What were funerals like for the church? Do either of you remember?
Well, of course, those earlier days, you know, like when her,
There were no funeral
no
homes. They had
funeral
the bodies
homes,
in
you
the
know.
home.
So well, there was actually somebody that would take care of the body, but they wouldn't have a home where everybody go visit. So the body was embalmed and was brought back to the home.
Would the priest then come to the home and say a prayer
Or
service?
yeah, they'd come to the homes, say the rosaries or whatever, you know, and then, you know, you know, it was different then. They called it, of course, it was a wake just like it is now. But now, you know, at 10 o'clock, everybody leaves. See, in those days, there was somebody up with the body all night. They didn't leave the body alone, see. When they were in the house, somebody was awake, you know. Somebody would, you know, some go to bed and the rest would stay there, see. And of course, they weren't held more than overnight at the house, you know, and then, of course, next day was the burial. But, yeah, it was a little different, yeah. So that changed, yeah. It's easier this way now, and you don't have to wake up to be awake all 24 hours. You know, of course, one person couldn't do it, so you change off, you know. But
Well, today now, sometimes they bring him to the church the day before, and they'll have rosary and just family gathering, you know, say at the funeral home or at the church. Here lately, there's been a lot of them that have the body in the church in the early evening, then the night before, and the burial the next day. Then they have that service right in the church the evening before already too.
Kind of going to a medium between the short funerals and the way they used to be.
Yeah,
yeah,
more or less.
well, it's if the people want it in the church overnight, you know, then they have the rosary at the church that evening, but not everybody wants to do it, and then, you know, they get together at the Linton funeral home.
But they'll still have the big funeral in the church the next morning.
Yeah,
though,
yeah.
too.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
the big funeral, but I mean, just the night before, you know, if you didn't want it to be at the church, they'd have it at the funeral home, yeah.
On a little lighter note, what was your most favorite holiday growing up as a child? What holiday do you like the most?
Well, I don't know. The 4th of July was a big day.
What would you do on the 4th of July?
Oh, well, there'd be a lot going on, you know. You'd have big parade. I mean, Strasbourg was full of people, you know. They had a big parade, you know. And of course, there was all kinds of accordion players in Strasbourg. And so there was all kinds of floats, and there was an accordion player on each one, I think, you know. And of course, you could buy all kinds of fireworks, and the street was roped off, you know, all day. You know, no vehicles on the street. And it was a fun day. I enjoyed 4th of July, yeah.
There's always a lot of people that gathered for that 4th of July. That started, say, with the parade probably about 10 in the morning and going
that-
to the night.
that
Because
was-
they'd have evening dance then, you know.
That was
and it would
full
just
till
continue
midnight.
on.
The street was full of kids and people, yeah.
They'd
It was a
have,
big
you know,
day.
games and races and what have you for the kids, so that'd be things
Yeah,
going on
that
for
was-
the kids
that
and
was
for
it.
the adults, you know. And but that too has lost a lot.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
nothing anymore.
It's just not much anymore. They'll have a little parade and probably
That's,
have a little races for the kids, and
yeah, that's where it ends,
that's
you
about
know.
it.
Yeah.
That's about it. It's
That was a big day, yeah.
a lot of those fun times and fun activities, I think, that used to be, I don't know, they're just getting lost by the wayside, it seems like.
4th of July for you is more of just a time to get together and socialize?
Pretty
Growing
much,
up as
yeah,
a child and see everybody?
Yeah, everybody was in town. I mean, there
Yeah,
was,
everybody went to town, yeah.
everybody was in.
What was your scariest or most adventurous memory as a child?
There wasn't any, right?
Not really.
I don't know. I really can't
Well,
think
I
of
was going to
anything.
say the storm of 1966, but we were married already then. That was in later years.
Yeah, well, that was a big thing. Yeah, we had we were milking at that time, and of course, the barn wasn't really that far from the house, but you couldn't see 10 feet in front of your face, you know. And we never went over to milk for, I think 3 milkings we missed for sure.
3 we missed, yeah.
You couldn't trust yourself going out, you know. I mean, a child was lost there north of Hague and died in the storm. And so I just didn't trust it. And then my cattle were in a barn, kind of a loose barn, you know, open front end barn, my stock house. And well, you felt, where are they, you know? I mean, the milk cows were in the barn, they were safe, they weren't going anywhere. But those over there now, are they going from the wind and into the storm? You didn't know. So finally, I think on the second day, we found every cord, everything, vacuum cleaner cords, and so it would lead me across the yard. Then over where the cattle were, there was corrals. After I got there, I tied the thing to the corral, and then I could follow the barn and see where the cattle are, what's happening. And so, but it started storming inside this barn, and the cattle kept moving up on top of the snow, so they were up in the rafters already, you know. And you know, but I didn't lose any. We didn't lose any, but a lot of people lost a lot of cattle that time. You know, they wandered off. Some didn't have no housing to go in, see, and so they just were behind windbreaks. And pretty soon, that snow got so high, and they got out and they started wandering off. They go from the wind, and they were storm shut, you know. And but after I checked and saw that they were all there yet and everything, and then I wandered back to the cords and rope and followed it back to the house. But you couldn't trust yourself, no, absolutely not. And then there was one thing, we raised some pigs over there, and I had a brood sow. And of course the next day, you know, yeah, where's that pig? You can't find it, absolutely. Looked all over, you know. She must have wandered off, who knows. Anyway, we were sitting at the supper table one evening, about 5 days afterwards, here she comes walking into the yard. And then after that, I started looking, well, she had to be someplace, maybe I can find where she was, but I couldn't find it. So I don't know where she was, but she survived that 5 days wherever she was buried in. And so we didn't lose a thing. Yeah, everything was safe. Yeah, that was, and then, of course, tornadoes. We were close by tornadoes. One tornado when we lived over there on the farm came from the south, and it passed just a half mile west of the farm. And of course we could hear the wind, it was dark, and anyway, it passed just west of the farm, and it took 2 farms north of us. The Adam Eberly farm took everything except the house was standing yet, and that was all tore up. All the windows were out and everything. And it took the barn out of the Adam Goldaddy farm, and then it went back further. It went quite a ways. It destroyed Wald's. Andy Wald was living down there. Remember, it took some of his, and then it went back and took the Schumacher farm, except for a house was left, and then it went towards Wishick, and did some more. It went a long ways, yeah.
And this was all in the '66 storm?
It was afterward. This was afterwards, right? The tornado, or was it first? I'm not even sure. 60.
I think the tornado was in '64 and the storm was in '66.
Yeah, it wasn't far apart. See, the tornado, was during the summer. See, and of course the storm was in March. What, 6th?
It was early days in March in '66.
Yeah. And then when I was home yet, we had a tornado come through the farm, and took so it didn't take the whole farm. It busted in the back end of the barn, and of course we were in the house, and of course those days they had these big windows, and of course when it came, it blew in the windows. Glass flew to the other end. It was just lucky nobody was in the way of it, And of course, but it took the neighbor's barn, and it blew it into the house. It tore the barn completely down, and portions of that roof and whatever came and went right through the house of the neighbor's house. Yeah.
And that's
So
when
this
you were
big.
a child?
That was when I was probably maybe 10, 15 years old or whatever when that happened. Yeah. Those are probably the 2 scariest things I went through. Yeah.
I'd say a tornado works.
So yeah, there were some scary moments, I guess, but lived through it.
Are there any other childhood memories that you would like to share?
Time we couldn't
course.
find Darren when Darren, our youngest son, we were all outside working. I guess some of us girls and I were painting or whatever, and I don't know what the guys were doing pretty soon.
Probably out the field.
Probably out. No, I don't think you were out the field, because all of a sudden, he was our youngest son. He was probably about 4 years old at the time, and pretty soon, where's Darren? Can't find Darren, and we had a big dam right behind the house, just down the hill, and that was always kind of scary that the kids don't get down there and fall in there, and so we were all running and hollering and looking, and finally one of the girls found him, and he had laid down and fell asleep up just from the granary over a little ways. So found him out there sleeping. That was kind of scary.
That would be.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important to share your life story? Why do you think it's important to share these memories?
Well, I don't know, really. It's something that, the older people didn't seem to do, I think. And later in life, when you're young, you don't think of that, you think, you just think, this goes on forever, what the heck, But when you get older, you think about saving some of this thing. That's why she does a lot of that writing, to preserve all this, And you should just, when you're back up in Fargo, or borrow that book from Miller and go through it. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Oh. Katie, could you expand a little more? Why did you make those ancestry books on your family? Why was that important to you?
I guess what actually got me started was after over 25 years, all I was doing was working, milking cows and driving tractors and taking care of the children. And I just finally one day thought, there's got to be more to my life than doing this for the rest of my life. And then one of my cousins was in the area and came out to visit us. She lives in California, and she said, Katie, I can't believe it. You got this beautiful church and you haven't even got a church flyer that you can pick up, about your church. No history, no nothing. She said, you better get after your priest so they get something together, and if not, maybe you better do it, and she really was insistent on it. And, well, we had an elderly priest at the time, and I just knew nothing would come out of it. If I told him, but of course he wasn't interested, And I guess that's what got me started with my first book, is to get the history of the church and the town together, and after I had that done, then quite a number was said, well, how come you didn't put some family histories in there? You should have put family histories in there. Well, okay, so I eventually, went and did Hague area too, and got into all the family histories, and of course the history on our ancestors, how they came over and how it was kind of back over, and how they went from Germany to Russia and finally just decided to come to America when they lost all their religious rights and were to be drafted into the service and everything else, and decided to come to America. And I just gradually thought, well, I guess it's up to me again to to work on it, and it took a lot of hours, of course, to get all that information together, make contacts to get the info, and then get it all together and get to a printer, and of course that isn't cheap either anymore, to get the books published and everything, and but I eventually did get it done. So I did from 1986 to 1990, I did 3 books. And then I just kind of quit and I said, that's enough, But as time went on, I couldn't quit. I just couldn't quit because I wanted to document my life from a little child on, and then at first I didn't get much encouragement from some of my family, and I was very downhearted, and finally just thought, okay, this is my project, and I'm going to do it, And
has your family taken more of an interest in it now that they've seen
oh,
it?
once I was into it, and they realized, yeah, I guess, it is, very valuable.
Yeah,
And everything. And,
towards the end, each one of the kids put up their own portion. So when you get back at the back end of the book, each child put up their own history of their family and things like that. Yeah.
Even your kids have gotten into it?
Yeah, well, a portion
They put it
for
in
each
this
one
book,
from
yeah.
the time. Oh, well, of course we had pictures in as little as growing up too, but once they got married then and started their families, so there's each one has their 2, 3, 4 pages in of their family up to 2002 when it was published now. And I said, okay, from here on now you document your own families, and
It definitely shows how important it is and why it's important.
Right.
No, after the book was done, they were glad. But I don't know, maybe they thought, well, it's too much work for you to do it and all that. But
well, I guess they didn't realize how much I was going to all put in there, and I can't do anything halfway. I have to do it complete. And so I do get along with no matter what I'm doing. I get along, and but at least I document everything with pictures, and I guess my blessing was that Betty Kuss Schumacher, she was originally born at Strasbourg, and I had gotten to know her because she's a lot younger, but we had met and our paths had crossed. She had been here, and in fact she had even videoed some of my pictures and stuff, and put them into her record. She's very much into genealogy records too, and So I knew going to like United Printing and so forth again really gets expensive, you know, because I had done 3 books already and I knew all about it. And so I contacted her and she said, well, I haven't done any like this yet, but I've been thinking I'd like to go into it, you know. She said, why don't you send me some material once and I'll give it a try and we can see what we can accomplish through that, you know. And so we started working together and of course we both had a really, really hit it hard to get it done till our anniversary because I had started one winter before and being I wasn't sure if I wanted to go on or not, and then of course when summer came I had no time anyway and just kind of put it in the back burner again. And then the next year, the next winter, okay, now coming summer is our anniversary, and either I'm going to do it or I'm going to forget it. It's got to be done by that time, you know. So we both really had to push it, but we did get it done. And so she's, you know, she was just wonderful to work with. And put all those color pictures in, you know, when I showed it like to Alan Burke from the Emmons County Record or Mr. Johnson from the Timberlake Topic, you know, and they were just amazed. How could you get this book done with all these color pictures? This is so expensive, you know. And but she did a great job, so finally got it done.
That's neat. It's really neat.
So,
are there any other memories or insights that stand out that you'd like to share from your past, from growing up?
I guess mainly is we grew up such a simple life. And we weren't bored. I mean, I was alone all the time, you know. But my interest was working outside, being outside, spending time with all animals outside. It didn't matter, you know, because that was all I had. And I just had no problem with it. And nowadays, they all have toys and you know, computers, and you just name it, and still they're bored. And I guess I really don't understand why is that. They can't entertain themselves with and be involved with something. They think it has to be something different every week or something, you know. Well, our life was just so much more simple.
Yeah,
You
then
miss the simple times, Jeff, and miss, and kind of wish you were back in that simpler time.
I do, because life was so much easier back then. You didn't have the worries you have today.
the stress wasn't there.
There was, you lived so simply, and you weren't rushed with work, and sure, you didn't have a lot of extra money, but you had everything you needed. And you didn't work till midnight like our young farmers do now, just trying to keep going and still make it on the farm, you know. And after the spring seeding time, you kind of had a little bit of a break to relax and go to Bismarck, go shopping, or do a little bit something for leisure. And now, well, they have no time for nothing. There's just no time off anymore.
The hardest part of the farming those days was the hay. You know, the small square bales, you know, they were backbreaker, you know, they were heavy, and we made sometimes, we had quite a few cattle.
10,
we made
11,000
small
squares,
bales, you know, and they all had to be hauled home by hand, you know. So that was probably the hardest job. It was the hay. Yeah. Then later on, of course, we started raising more corn and silage, and so there wasn't quite as much bales. And of course, then when the round bales came, that was a blessing. You know, you didn't have to handle it by hand anymore. Yeah.
Oh, we didn't have to handle the round bales by hand.
Well,
They're too big.
you used to with the farm hands. That time you had farm loaders, tractor loaders, you know, and they were too big, so you had to have a machine to carry them, you know. So you didn't have to handle that hay by hand anymore. And you know, like I don't know how many the kids, how many hours, you know, she was out there too, and we both farmed, you know, we were both out with 2 tractors, and I don't know how many grew up during the summer in the back end of the tractor, lay behind the seat sleeping. We kind of put a bit in there behind there, and they'd ride along, and when they get wet, you know, a little lunch and something to drink, and when they got tired, they just laid down and slept for hours in the back of that tractor while we were working. Yeah, that a lot of them spend some time on there. And then, of course, after Jody got a little bigger, and she would take care of him, you know. But
She was about 5, 6 years old, 5, I guess. And she would be taking care of 3 little ones behind her yet, and I'd be out there hauling grain and swathing and whatever needed to be done, you know.
Helping out because the kids were too young to help
Oh,
out.
yeah.
yeah,
We'd have some hired help
yeah,
sometimes,
we
but
usually have some school kid during the summer, you know, when, you know, farm kids, you know, there was always farm kids, and we'd hire somebody for the summer to help along when there's no school.
that's what, about a year ago, one of our young boys that we had hired, remember John Feist?
Yeah.
He's down in Colorado now, and he hadn't been back for many, many years, but he still got sisters living here, and so he was back here, and he stopped in to visit with us, and he reminisced the time he spent with us out there on the farm, and how he liked to work with us out there, you know, and stuff, so, yeah.
I see. Well, I really appreciate your time today and seeing all the models of everything to finally put pictures with all these implements and all these farm equipment, machinery that was used when
Yeah,
you were a
it was
child.
different, that's for sure.
And I can now picture it. Right. If need be, would you two be willing to do a follow-up interview if we find we have more questions for you?
Yeah, sure, why not?